want to make sure that that every time I speak, I try to give the business community a better understanding of why the airport is important to you. In Paulding County, we don't have an interstate, we don't have a coastline, we don't have a major river. What we have is we have Highway 278 and the Paulding County Airport. That is the primary infrastructure upon which big commerce could be conducted in Paulding County. And when I say big commerce, if we were going to land the next Kia plant or the next major employer in the Paulding County area, that employer is going to want a way to bring in important members of their board, their visitors, their customers, their clients, their vendors. And the way they're going to get there is probably fly. And so the typical scenario there would be a small corporate jet would slip in unknown to probably anybody in the community. They start on a 10-mile final. The engines are cut back to idle. They're passing over a very unpopulated part of Paulding County, and they land 90% of the time unnoticed by almost anyone. Our preferred runway out at Paulding County Airport is runway 31. If you look at the map, when you take off, which is the annoying part of aviation, is the takeoff because the engines are running at full speed, the airplane's traveling slower, and so that's where you get the noise typically generated. And you're taking off right over the Paulding Forest, 10,000 acres of unpopulated, beautiful but unpopulated territory in Paulding County. And by the time the aircraft reaches a mile or two from the end of the runway, they're 3,000 feet in the air or more in a typical corporate jet. And you have no more sound than the every 2 minutes that we have the commercial jets that fly over Paulding County. There's a checkpoint called Dallas. If you know anything about aviation, you know that there are checkpoints that the pilots use to navigate in. And Dallas is located pretty much right over the water tower, the main Dallas water tower there. And virtually every aircraft that's coming in from the northwest passes right overhead. And they pass every 2 minutes. You can set your watch and you can time it. And if you look up, you can see them and you don't hear a thing. And that's aviation. So we get a lot of attention. We get a lot of people who want to see us be much quieter. But in reality, it's not as noisy as a lot of people want to lead you to believe. Noise is, of course, something that we try to mitigate, and we try to work every day to try to make that less offensive for the folks that live right around the airport. So safety, noise, and then what's next? What's next is, if you pull out one of my cards, when I came in, Yolanda's sitting in the back. She's the finest administrative support person that I've ever met personally, and I'm fortunate that she's mine. So if you know anything about Yolanda, you know that she's actually a chamber employee, and how we've been able to steal her away and keep her over at the airport every day is a mystery I haven't yet resolved. But Stacy, where are you? She's not your employee, she's mine. But we love Yolanda. So when she came to me and said, we need to print you business cards, what are they going to say? And I thought for a minute and I said, here's what we're going to put at the top. It says Paulding Northwest Atlanta Airport. That's our official name. And under that it says open for business. So safety, noise, business. Those are my focuses in that order. But business is what's going to keep this airport viable for our community. And again, there's a lot that goes on at that airport that most of the public isn't aware of. We have, on a typical day, we might have 1, 2, 3 corporate type aircraft that come in. That doesn't sound like a lot to you, but a typical corporate jet that's come in from, say, somewhere in the Midwest, they land thirsty. And we sell jet fuel. Our FBO, Paulding Jet Center, which is an independent company that is under contract to the Paulding County Airport to operate aircraft movements and the selling of fuel on the property, they will go out and service that aircraft, and they'll typically put 300, 400, 500 gallons of fuel in the aircraft. That's a lot of fuel, and that's a lot of profit for them. That's a lot of revenue generated for the airport. It doesn't take a whole lot of that to begin to add up into something that's a big deal. So business is a very important part of making this airport viable. And when I say viable, what does that mean? I like to tell the story that there's a bridge that you go across when you pull out of this property and you start heading in either direction. Before you travel a mile, you're going to go across a bridge. You're not going to pay a toll when you cross that bridge. You're not going to stop and drop a quarter in a meter. And that bridge generates zero revenue for the county. However, without that bridge, you would have no commerce being conducted up and down Highway 278 because you can't get there from here, wherever there is. In a modern society, airports are the bridges for commerce into communities such as ours. So I tend to get a little offended when people talk about, yeah, but your airport's not making money for the community. I beg to differ. I believe that our airport has the potential to make a great deal of money for our community in the form of infrastructure and commerce, which will be conducted on the backs of the airways and the public airspace, national airspace system, of which we are now a part in Paulding County by virtue of the fact that we have the Paulding County Airport. Let me say a word or two about Johnny Jenkins. He's the owner of the maintenance facility that you saw in the background. So yesterday I went through his area, and Johnny had 6 airplanes. He had 3 parked in his area where he's rented there from the McNeil family, who has our current row of T-hangars up. And he had 3 more aircraft parked in our big corporate hangar that were overflow. He rents space from us for his overflow business. If you know anything about aviation, you probably know that January and February are not great flying months because of the weather. And most of your small aircraft owners tend to wait until the spring to do their maintenance because they don't want to spend money in January and February just to let the airplane sit there in a hangar for 2 or 3 months while they wait for it to get warm enough to go fly. So historically, January and February are your slow months in the aviation maintenance business. Johnny's covered up, so we're really excited about that. But the significance of what I took note of those 6 airplanes that are in the queue for him to work on, only 1 was based at Paulding County Airport. The other 5 had come in from surrounding airports and surrounding areas, and they were there for maintenance work. And some percentage of these people who are coming to Johnny are going to say, well, it's a pretty nice airport. Maybe I'd like to base my aircraft here. And therein lies my next problem. We have 12 T-hangars, which are the classic storage box for a small piston-powered private aircraft for a small owner, small business. And they're all full. They're occupied. And so at our last board meeting on February 15th, and I took very careful note. I counted, Dave, there's only 4 members here. If we had 1 more, we'd have to advertise this as a public meeting. So we're safe, we're legal. But at our last board meeting, the board authorized me to begin exploratory planning and design work on a new row of T-hangars so that we can bring in some more business. We've got people on the waiting list that would like to come to Paulding County, but they've got no place right now to put their aircraft. So that's an important next step for us to continue to bring revenue and customers into the county. We also passed a motion to authorize me to begin to look at building out our office space. We've got a 5,000 square foot office building attached to our big corporate hangar. The corporate hangar is completed, but the office building still has a dirt floor on the inside. And so unless I can find some Stone Age business that wants to come in and set up shop on the dirt floor, we're going to have to do some more work to get ready for business to open up in that terminal building. And if you're following what's going on in our aviation world here in Paulding County, you may know that in December, we voted to buy out the IBA. The IBA has been a very important partner to the Paulding County Airport in the build-up and the development and the opening of Paulding County Airport. And without the IBA, much of what we've done there would have been impossible. However, it's time to graduate the airport and let it stand on its own. And so we voted to buy out all of the remaining business relationships that exist between the IBA and the Paulding County Airport. And so we're now, I call it the divorce settlement. Some people have criticized me for that, but it's the agreement between these two organizations that we, the Paulding County Airport Authority, are now going to take full responsibility for finances, infrastructure, buildings, everything that is a part of the airport there. So we now have to make it on our own without the crutch of the IBA in the background. And so that means that we now all tenant leases, we own the fuel farm, we own the terminal building, the corporate hangar. So this corporate hangar has been built but not finished, and now we've got the responsibility to build it out. So that's what that motion was all about. So if you're looking for some office space, I got some office space for you. Come talk to me and we'll figure out how to build it out to suit your needs. Other activities that are going on out there, we are continuing to try to search for an aviation related business that would, you heard it in the video. My next target is to bring in an avionics shop to Paulding County Airport, because small business aircraft owners, companies who own these turbine piston twins up to say a Gulfstream class jet, they need a couple of things in terms of infrastructure available to them in order to make our airport as attractive as it can possibly be. One is a maintenance facility. We've got that now. The next is an avionics shop. We're working on that. The third would be a flight school where they can get recurrency training for their pilots and that sort of thing. We're working on that too. So a lot of things to look forward to going forward at the Paulding County Airport. A lot of things that we would like to partner with business to do. And we think the future is bright and everything is up at the airport. So with that, if anybody has any quick questions for us, or if you don't, we'll all get back to work. But anybody have anything for me? Yes, sir. I know Embry-Riddle very well. In addition to being a pilot, I'm a maintenance technician, FAA authorized inspector, avionics designer, and I've worked with Embry-Riddle, and I've employed Embry-Riddle graduates in my previous career at Georgia Tech. Embry-Riddle is centered out of Florida. They do have a satellite group up here in the Atlanta area, and they would be a target for us to go after. But we don't yet have the market here in Paulding County that would probably make them be attracted to us yet. So that might be a 5-year plan, but probably not a 1 or 2 year target for us. But good question. Yes, sir?
What is going on?
Okay. A lot of people ask that question. So what is going on with the commercial side of the airport? And the answer is it's all tied up in the court system and the FAA. So the next step along those lines would be for us to obtain what's called a Part 139 certification operating, basically it's a certificate from the FAA. And the FAA has put us on notice that they will take no further action on our application for our 139 certificate, and this is a direct quote from their letter to us, until all current and future litigation has been resolved. Now, exactly what future litigation means, I don't know. You would have to ask the FAA. But the bottom line is the FAA has put this action on hold because of all of the legal action surrounding the commercialization activities that began at the Paulding County Airport in 2013. So there's not a whole lot that I can add to that. I am powerless because I don't tell the FAA what to do. So I'm powerless as far as forcing anything here. We continue to support the contracts that we have signed. We continue to move forward with what we're allowed to move forward with. But for the most part, it's tied up in between the courts and the bureaucracy of the FAA. Any other questions?
Would you comment on the equivalency of a mid-sized jet with homeowners paying their taxes?
Okay.
And also the Lake Point expansion and that McCollum is full.
Well, okay, let me take those as two separate questions. So the question is, what is the tax revenue that's generated from a typical aircraft? And I own a 1959 Piper Comanche, and I don't pay a whole lot of taxes on that. But the Beechjet 400 that just moved into our corporate hangar, that's about a $1.5 million aircraft. And aircraft are recorded in the county in which they are based. So in Georgia, an aircraft that is permanently based at our airport would pay property tax just like you do on your automobile to the county in which they are based. So a $1.5 million airplane would generate the same tax rate that a $1.5 million automobile or any other personal property registered in Paulding County. The nice thing about that is they don't tend to need a whole lot of police protection, fire protection, and so forth, so they don't require a lot of services from the county. So it is a good revenue source to offset the operating expenses of having an airport in your county. Oh, what was the other question? McCollum. Okay. So Cobb County International Airport, its new official name. Cobb County International Airport is, for all practical purposes, full to general aviation, small general aviation traffic like we're beginning to see pick up at Paulding County. They have converted most of their footprint around the property to larger corporate hangars, and there are very, very few remaining T hangars, and there's still a fair number of aircraft tied down on their ramp, but most owners of especially higher end piston single aircraft would prefer to be in a T hangar. And so we're very interested in attracting that business. So that's another reason why we would need to very actively pursue another row of T hangars, is so that we can get some of that overflow traffic that's coming really from all of your metropolitan feeder airports, PDK, Fulton County, McCollum. They've all, for all practical purposes, become somewhat unfriendly to the smaller general aviation market for various reasons, and that's a very ripe market for us, which is another reason why the formula of having a maintenance facility and an avionics shop and a flight school on the field play into that whole equation of attracting business to Paulding County and really literally putting our airport on the map. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, before when we did improvements or build out at the airport, there was a certain percentage that the FAA would do reimbursement. Will that continue with any improvements or?
So the business model at airports in America is somewhat complicated. The FAA provides up to $150,000 to every airport, certainly in Georgia, I assume in the nation, in basically a return of tax money that is generated by the aviation community itself. So when you go fly, you pay taxes on your airline tickets, what Clark Howard calls the junk fees. I love the junk fees because some of that comes back to us in the form of grants from the FAA. Now, some people might say, well, why would the FAA take money out of Hartsfield and invest it in Paulding County? Well, here's the reason. If we did not have these feeder and regional airports around the city of Atlanta, then every small aircraft and every corporate jet and every non-commercial aircraft in our very crowded airspace system would have to land at Hartsfield, which would choke up the capacity of that airport. So the FAA invests in airports such as ours so that we can provide the infrastructure that they need in order to support air transportation and commerce in the United States. So it's all part of a very important funding equation. In addition, the state of Georgia also has an aviation budget. that they spend every year to make enhancements to the smaller airports. And they make grants available, just like they do for DOT. You know, a lot of the road work that's done in Paulding County is done with either federal dollars or state dollars. And typically these grants have to be matched with some percentage of local funds. State money that comes to us directly from the state of Georgia, we match at 25%. So we get a 75% grant from the state, we put 25% matching funds with it, and we go forward and do whatever the project is that was approved for that grant. Our funds that come from the FAA are much sweeter than that. They come with only a 10% matching requirement. And if it's a program that's been approved by the Georgia aviation branch of the Georgia DOT, they'll kick in another 5%, which means we only have to contribute 5%. So we get, in effect, a 95% grant that we match with 5% local funds that then fund whatever the activity is that we're doing at the airport. We are essentially, I hate the word guarantee, but for all practical purposes, if we have candidate projects that we can put forward that will be approved by both the FAA and the Georgia DOT, we are insured of $150,000 in grants every year. We can apply for additional grants beyond that. This year we have been approved for, boy, you're going to see me do public math here. We got $150,000 in our stipend funding. We got $188K for an environmental grant for environmental work that we're doing at the airport, and then we got $300K from the state of Georgia for a wildlife fence that we would like to put up. So our contribution to all of that funding would be on the order of $150,000. And we got whatever that adds up to. We'll play the tape back in a little bit and we'll see what all that adds up to. But $500,000, over $500,000 in state and federal funds that help us manage and operate and upgrade our infrastructure. Other questions? Well, thank y'all very much. Robert told me to be done at 10 minutes till 9, and here it is 10 minutes till 9. So in the aviation business, we try to run a tight schedule. Thank y'all very much.